The Hawk, the Hound, and the Butterfly, Chapter 11, Apollo, Part 2. Athena stepped up from behind the man's body. She pressed her foot against his back and pulled her sword out. "Don't forget to watch your back, little prince," Athena said as she wiped the man's blood off of her blade against his cloth shirt. She put it back in its sheath and came and knelt on the opposite side as Apollo of the boy. Ares jerked his spear free of the tree and joined them. "Thank you," Apollo said to Athena, but his voice was weak. He cleared his throat and repeated himself. Athena glanced at him and nodded. It was more of an acknowledgement than he was expecting. Athena took off her helm and looked over the boy. She jabbed 2 fingers beside the wound. The boy yelped. "You're going to answer my questions. Got it?" Apollo grabbed Athena's wrist. "Athena, you don't need to—" "Quiet," she spat at Apollo. "Don't make me regret what I just did for you." She looked down at his hands on her wrist. Apollo pulled his hand away. He closed his mouth and stood, taking a few steps back from Athena and the boy. Athena crouched in front of the boy, so she was all he could see. What was that tower for? The boy's eyes started to roll back into his head. Athena brought them back by pushing her fingers into his wound. The boy yelped. "Transmission," the boy said. His breaths were labored. "Send, transport, research vessels." Athena leaned in close to the boy's face. "Research vessels?" "The spheres. They carry specimens." Athena glanced over her shoulder at Ares. They seemed to have an unspoken conversation that Apollo was not a part of. "Where do they transport them to?" Athena spat at the boy. He said nothing. His breathing was so slow that Apollo wasn't even sure he was still breathing. Athena pushed her fingers into his wound. The boy kicked up, gasping for air. "Please," the boy begged. "Answer the question." Athena faked to press her fingers into his wound again. Apollo stepped forward. Ares grabbed his arm and gave it a firm squeeze. "The specimen. Once collected, they return to Creator's compound." The boy struggled with each word. The only thing that was keeping him alive was Athena bringing him back with each painful push against his wound. Blood oozed from the wound. It dripped over Athena's hand into a puddle on the grass. Apollo had caused this. He had put that hole in the boy's stomach. Apollo had never been so close to see what damage his arrows could cause before. They were always just faceless specks in the distance. It didn't matter who they really were, or if they had a family. They were the enemy. They were who he'd been trained to hate for years. Seeing that boy made Apollo's insides turn. "Where is the Creator's compound?" Athena pressed her fingers against the boy's wound. It gaped open. Blood gushed out. The boy was barely conscious, let alone able to speak anything but gibberish. Apollo couldn't let this go on any longer. "Athena," Apollo said. He shrugged away from Ares and stepped closer to Athena. "Maybe you should let him go. There's always another arrow in the quiver. We can find someone else." Athena pulled her fingers away from the boy's wound. For a moment, Apollo thought he had gotten through to her. She stood, looming over Apollo. Apollo felt his fingers stretch at his side. "Did you say something?" Her voice was calm. Apollo cleared his throat. "You should let him go. He's had enough." "Oh, he's had enough, has he?" Athena turned wild. Her eyes lit up, nostrils flared, and her lips curled into a snarl. She looked like a wolf that had just made its first kill in a week, and Apollo had taken it from her. He's just a kid," Apollo stuttered. "Do you think they," Athena pointed to the boy, "are going easy on Artemis because she's just a kid?" "I don't know," Apollo said with little volume, but Athena heard. "No, you don't, but I do. I've seen what they do to our men. I've gone to their widows and told them their families will never be whole again. So what makes you think you can order me around?" I don't. I just think... Apollo was cut off. A swish of feathers blew past as Athena slapped Apollo across his face with the back of her hand. Apollo's cheek began to turn red and swell. Ares grabbed Athena's hand before she could strike again. "Athena, Ares said to her. Remember the mission. Remember why we're here. He was serious and focused, a rare sight to see. Athena's arm relaxed. Ares let it fall free. Athena nodded. She turned and went back to the boy. Apollo stood still, frozen in place. He felt as small as a mouse and as weak as a leaf. How could Athena change so quickly, from the person who saved his life to a monster that wanted to harm it? Where is the Creator's compound? The boy started coughing, spraying blood all over himself. Please, no more. Please. The boy's words stung Apollo harder than Athena's hand had. Apollo looked up at the boy, and their eyes connected. They were pleading with Apollo, begging him to set him free of this torture. Athena slapped the boy across his face. Apollo snapped out of his daze. He scooped up his bow off the ground and loaded an arrow, pointing it at where Athena's heart would be, if she had one. Athena, stop it now, he said. His voice didn't falter. It was strong and defiant. Athena rose up slowly. Apollo followed her, keeping his arrow pointed at her. Are you going to stab me in the back, little prince? Athena turned. There, be brave for once. Face me like a man. She stepped closer to Apollo. His arrow was now inches away from her heart. Apollo's hands began to shake. Athena stood still, as calm as ever. She knew he would never let go. You think that arrow would even dent this armor? Shall I make it easier for you and remove it? Hey, Apollo, Athena, come on now. You two need to cool it, Ares said. He stood beside Apollo, ready to divert the arrow, but Apollo knew he'd never need to. Just let him go, Athena, Ares said. Fine, Athena said. If the little prince wishes for me to stop, I will. Athena held up her hands as if they were surrendering. Apollo never thought she would so easily. He hesitated, before dropping his bow as the boy's blood ran down Athena's fingers. You can take your toys and put them away now, Athena said. Apollo sheathed his arrow and slipped his bow over his head. He turned and started walking back to where the horses were hidden. There was no blood on his hands, but they were still shaking. Apollo clenched them into fists so Athena couldn't see. As Apollo got past the tree line, a piercing shriek rang out. He turned and ran back into the clearing. Athena was standing over the boy, casually wiping a dagger with a cloth torn from the boy's shirt. Blood gushed from a wide slit across the boy's throat. Apollo's knees went weak. He grew lightheaded. Athena came up to him. As they say, there's always another arrow in the quiver.